Nepal is a land where Hindu and Buddhist deities have been worshipped for ages. And this royal plaza in Kathmandu, quite aside from its political and historical importance, has long been a center of that worship. Of the deities revered here, the one inside this palace is unique. She is a living goddess, the so-called Devi, and she is a pre-pubescent child. More about her in a moment, but first, a few things about the neighborhood.
This is Durbar Square, one of Kathmandu's most culturally and historically significant places. Durbar means royal palace, and this palace complex dates to the 3rd century, although many of the structures here were added much later, many of them in the 16th and 17th centuries.
It's impossible to overstate the spiritual and emotional importance of this square to many Nepalis. Yet thanks to tourism, you're apt to meet people here from anywhere.
Shanghai, Suzhou, Suzhou.
Engaged in any number of things.
The best way to think of this place is as a collection of royal buildings that were added by different kingdoms over nearly 2 millenniums, although the earliest of these have long since been destroyed. As you look at these marvelous buildings, don't mistake the condition of some of them for neglect. What you see is the result of that 7.9 earthquake in 2015 that killed thousands of people and did widespread damage, and a terrible number on some glorious centuries-old buildings at the center of this square. Some of these buildings were reduced to rubble, including the Kathmandu, a centuries-old sacred wooden structure. It's now been replaced, but the original, it's gone. Each building and each facet of this complex is significant to the dynasty that it represents, but unlike in many places in the world where successive kingdoms obliterate the monuments of their predecessors, here the winners, if you will, have merely added to the work of those they vanquished. An example of that political and religious continuity is the temple I'm walking beside now, a temple dedicated to the god Hanuman and erected by the Malla dynasty in 1672. It's remained unchanged, or it had remained unchanged through successive dynasties. But as you can tell, with the props up against the building now, what did change it was the earthquake. I'm standing almost under the earthquake scaffolding. As you can see, that has not interrupted people from approaching this holy shrine, the statue of Hanuman. The statue draped in red with some sort of red paste on its face is much revered. To his adherents, he's alive, albeit in another realm. Of all the deities revered here, there's one that stands above the rest because she is indeed very much alive. I'm referring to the Kumari Devi, or the living goddess, who resides in her own palace known as the Kumari Ghar. The Devi is a pre-pubescent virgin, carefully chosen by a committee of senior Buddhist priests as well as an astrologer, who's believed to be possessed by the goddess Durga. She's revered not only by Buddhists, but by some Hindus as well. The current Devi, whose name is Trishna Shakya, was chosen in 2017 at the age of 5. So by now in 2024, that would make her 12. So she presumably has a few more years in her exalted position until, that is, her first menstrual cycle, and then she will be out, and a feverish search will commence for her successor. She actually makes regular appearances here between the hours of 9 and 11 most mornings, and in the afternoons between 4 and 6. But I must warn you, when she does make her appearance, the next one scheduled for just a few minutes, I won't be able to show it to you because photography of any kind is strictly forbidden. The lives of these child goddesses are wrapped in mystery, not to mention social isolation, which is, you can imagine, only adds to the fascination about them. A girl chosen as living goddess, who must be from among an elite Kumari caste, by the way, is selected after a long series of tests, including one for bravery. Specifically, she will have spent a night in a room surrounded by the heads of ritually slaughtered goats without showing any fear. Maybe you recall some years ago the case of the current Kathmandu Devi's predecessor famously being removed from her position after attending the premiere of a documentary on living goddesses at a film festival in the United States. But it turned out okay. Her title was restored a couple of weeks later after she underwent a so-called cleansing ceremony for any sins she may have committed while traveling. It's very quiet in this courtyard at the moment, but in just a few minutes, people will begin to flock in here until the courtyard fills, both with tourists and with local adherents who come to see the Devi not out of curiosity, but to offer their reverence.
Close your camera, please, stand up. Calm down.
Please, no photo, no mobile, no camera, please. Just moment. Please maintain silence. Please maintain silence. Please maintain silence.
Do namaste.
Madam, no photo, okay? No mobile, no photo. Okay? Kabi, please, no photo. And do namaste. Dachina video box values, right? Yeah. It's offering box.
To encapsulate it, the whole thing happened in less than 2 minutes. She made her way to the balcony window, which is directly behind me. Before she made her way there, everyone in the crowd was admonished to stand up and gather in a horseshoe shape around this small inner courtyard where adherents to the faith, obvious local people, worshipful people were intermingled with foreign tourists. Then and only then did the living goddess make an appearance. She backed away from the window, she backed forward, she repeated that rhythm a couple of times as people down below looked a mixture of curious and worshipful. The locals, obviously, with their hands folded in a prayerful pose as they greeted her with shouts of namaste, to see the living embodiment of Durga, as she is reckoned to be, appearing live. if not on camera. Well, having seen the Devi, I can't offer any insights based on any real knowledge of her, but I will offer my first impressions of her. She seemed rather delicate, and I just wonder if she understands the adoration afforded her. She slowly and I think rather reluctantly came to the portico, surrounded on two sides by handlers, a woman and a man, whose primary job seemed to be to instruct the crowd not to take photos. And the Devi proceeded to come back briefly, and again seemingly reluctantly, so that she could be fully seen, even as those down below who are adherents or devotees offered folded hands, a prayerful posture, and a chant of Namaste. It was a bit surreal, but it is the reality of the religious culture still practiced here in Kathmandu.